The great hall of Ashford Manor blazed with firelight and false laughter. Crystal chandeliers cast fractured rainbows across walls draped in crimson and gold, and the scent of roasted meat mingled with perfume and ambition. Every alpha of consequence had gathered for the bonding ceremony, the ancient ritual where alliances were forged through marriage. Elowyn stood at the edge of the crowd, her silver gown pooling at her feet, like moonlight on water. She was beautiful in the way that made other women uncomfortable: hair, the color of autumn leaves cascading past her shoulders, eyes like polished amber that seemed to catch light from impossible angles. But beauty meant nothing when you were born Omega, in a world that valued only strength. "Smile," her father hissed from beside her, his fingers digging into her elbow. "Lord Aldrich approaches. Remember what this alliance means for our family." Elowyn forced her lips to curve, as Aldrich cut through the crowd toward them. He was handsome, in a cold, sculpted way: sharp cheekbones, ice-blue eyes, shoulders broad enough to block out the light. Any other Omega would have wept with joy to be chosen by him. Elowyn felt only dread. "My lord," her father bowed deeply, "my daughter has prepared herself for your announcement." Aldrich's gaze swept over Elowyn like she was livestock at auction. Something flickered in his expression: disgust, perhaps, or disappointment. Her wolf whimpered inside her chest, sensing rejection before it came. "Actually," Aldrich said, his voice carrying deliberately across the suddenly quiet hall, "there will be no announcement. Not regarding this one." Elowyn's blood turned to ice. "My lord," her father's voice cracked, "I've reconsidered the arrangement." Aldrich smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I require a mate who can provide strong heirs. An Omega of uncertain bloodline and questionable strength is insufficient for my needs." Whispers erupted like wildfire. Elowyn heard fragments: rejected, humiliated, worthless, each word a blade sliding between her ribs. "You promised," her father sputtered. "We had an agreement." "Agreements change." Aldrich was already turning away. "Perhaps she'll find a lesser alpha willing to overlook her deficiencies." The laughter that followed was quiet but devastating. Elowyn saw faces she'd known her entire life twisted with amusement at her shame. Even her father wouldn't meet her eyes, his expression shifting from shock to fury. Fury directed at her, as if she had somehow caused this. She ran. Her feet carried her through corridors she'd walked since childhood, past tapestries depicting great wolves in battle, past servants who pressed themselves against walls to avoid her. She didn't know where she was going. She only knew she couldn't stay in that hall, couldn't bear another second of their pitying stares and cruel whispers. Elowyn collapsed in an alcove at the far end of the east wing, where shadows pooled thick, and the sounds of celebration faded to a distant hum. She pressed her back against cold stone, and let the tears come. Worthless, deficient, insufficient. Her wolf howled inside her, wounded and confused. She'd done everything right, learned to walk with grace, to speak softly, to keep her eyes downcast in the presence of alphas. She'd buried every instinct that made her different, every strange feeling that sometimes rose in her chest like fire seeking air. And still, it wasn't enough. She would never be enough. "Why are you crying?" Elowyn's head snapped up. A man stood at the entrance to the alcove, silhouetted against the torchlight from the corridor beyond. She hadn't heard him approach impossible, given her wolf senses. "Forgive me," she whispered, scrambling to rise. "I didn't realize anyone." "Stay." The single word froze her in place. Not a request, a command that resonated in her bones, made her wolf go still with instinctive recognition. He stepped closer, and the torchlight finally illuminated his face. Elowyn forgot how to breathe. He was tall, taller than any alpha she'd ever seen, with shoulders that seemed to carry the weight of mountains. His hair was dark as a moonless night, swept back from a face that belonged on ancient coins. Strong jaw, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that looked carved from granite. But it was his eyes that stopped her heart. They were gold, not amber like hers, not brown with flecks of light. Pure, molten gold, like coins melted in a furnace, and they were fixed on her with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "Who hurt you?" His voice was low, rough, carrying an accent she couldn't place. "No one, my lord. I simply—" She stopped. Why was she explaining herself to a stranger? He moved closer still, close enough that she could smell him: pine forests, and wood smoke, and something wild beneath, something that made her wolf lift its head in sudden, startling interest. You're lying. He crouched before her, bringing those impossible eyes level with hers. I can smell the salt of your tears, the shame in your scent. His nostrils flared. And rage. Buried deep. But there. Eowyn pressed herself harder against the wall. No one had ever read her so easily. Who are you? She breathed. Before he could answer, footsteps echoed down the corridor. Her father's voice rang out, sharp with irritation. Eowyn, where is that useless girl? I'll not have her embarrass this family further. The stranger's expression shifted. Something dangerous flickered across his features. There and gone so quickly, Eowyn thought she'd imagined it. He rose to his full height, just as her father rounded the corner, flanked by two of Aldrich's guards. There you are. Lord Merrin's face contorted with disgust. Get up. You'll apologize to Lord Aldrich for your theatrical departure, and beg him to reconsider. She will do no such thing. The words cut through her father's tirade like a blade through silk. Lord Merrin's mouth hung open as he registered the speaker for the first time. The color drained from his face. Your Majesty, he stammered, dropping into a bow so deep his forehead nearly touched the floor. I didn't, that is. I had no idea, King Tavian. Please forgive. King. Eowyn's mind reeled. Tavian. King Tavian, of Valdris the Alpha King, who ruled the largest territory in the realm, whose pack was whispered about in fearful tones, whose power was said to rival the ancient wolves of legend. And he was standing between her and her father like a shield. This woman, Tavian said slowly, his golden gaze never leaving Eowyn's face. What is she to you? My daughter, Your Majesty. A disappointment, I'm afraid. She was meant to bond with Lord Aldrich, but her inadequacies. I've heard enough. King Tavian extended his hand toward Eowyn. His palm was rough with calluses, his fingers long and powerful. She stared at it, unable to comprehend what was happening. Stand, he said softly. You don't belong on the ground. Eowyn took his hand. The moment their skin touched, something happened, a jolt like lightning, a flash of heat that raced up her arm and exploded in her chest. Her wolf surged forward with a sound she'd never heard it make before, a sound of recognition so profound it brought fresh tears to her eyes. Tavian's pupils dilated. His hand tightened around hers, almost painfully, and when he spoke, his voice had dropped to something barely human. She comes with me. The silence that followed was absolute. Your Majesty, her father sputtered. I don't understand. You don't need to understand. Tavian pulled Eowyn to her feet, positioning her behind him with deliberate care. This woman is now under my protection. Any who challenge that will answer to me personally. But she's worthless. The words burst from Lord Merrin before he could stop them. A weak Omega with no prospects, no value. Tavian moved so fast, Eowyn barely saw it. One moment he stood beside her, the next, he had her father pinned against the wall, one hand wrapped around his throat. Say that again, Tavian growled. And the sound was not human at all. Tell me once more what she's worth. Her father made a strangled, terrified sound. Tavian. Eowyn heard herself speak, surprised by her own daring. Please. The Alpha King went still. Slowly, he released her father, who crumpled to the floor gasping. When Tavian turned back to her, his eyes still blazed gold, but something softer flickered beneath the fury. Come, he said, offering his hand once more. You're leaving this place. Eowyn looked at her father's cowering form. At the guards who wouldn't meet her eyes. At the corridor that led back to a life of shame and diminishment. Then she placed her hand in the Alpha King's, and let him lead her into the unknown. The carriage moved through darkness, its wheels crunching over frost-hardened roads. Eowyn sat rigid on the velvet seat, acutely aware of the man across from her. King Tavian hadn't spoken since they'd left Ashford Manor. He simply watched her with those unnerving golden eyes, his massive frame somehow making the spacious carriage feel suffocating. Where are you taking me? Eowyn finally asked, unable to bear the silence any longer. Valdris. His voice was rough, as if words cost him effort. My territory. Why? The question hung between them. Tavian's jaw tightened, and Eowyn saw his hands clench against his thighs, fighting something, restraining himself. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. The boldness surprised her. An Omega didn't challenge an Alpha. Certainly not a king. But something about his presence made her wolf restless, daring. unlike itself. Tavian leaned forward. The movement brought him close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body, could see the individual flecks of amber and bronze within his golden irises. What do you know about fate, little Omega? Eloin's breath caught. Fate? The bond between wolves. The recognition that happens once in a lifetime if you're fortunate. His gaze dropped to her lips, then lower, to the pulse hammering at her throat. Do you feel it? She wanted to lie. Every survival instinct screamed at her to deny everything, to remain small and unthreatening and forgettable, but her wolf wouldn't allow it. Yes, she whispered. I feel something. Tavian exhaled sharply, as if she'd struck him. He pulled back, putting distance between them, and Eloin saw his hands trembling. You shouldn't, he said harshly. I shouldn't have touched you, shouldn't have interfered. You'd be safer if I'd left you in that corridor. Safer? Eloin's voice rose. I had nothing there. No future. No, you had your life. His eyes met hers, and she saw something that looked terrifyingly like anguish. Being near me will take that from you. Before she could respond, the carriage lurched violently. Eloin was thrown forward, and suddenly she was pressed against Tavian's chest. His arms wrapped around her, instinctively. Time stopped. His heart pounded beneath her palm too fast, desperate. His scent enveloped her, and this close, she could identify its components. Snow-covered pines, wood smoke, wild mountain air, and beneath it all, something darker, something that called to her wolf, like a siren song. Are you hurt? His voice was strained, barely controlled. No. She should move. She knew she should move, but her body refused to obey. Tavian's hand came up to cup the back of her head, fingers threading through her hair. The touch was gentle, achingly so, at odds with the raw power she sensed coiled within him. Your eyes, she breathed. There, I know. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and Eloin gasped. His eyes were no longer simply gold. They were blazing, luminescent, casting actual light in the dim carriage interior. And as she watched, shadows seemed to move beneath his skin. Something massive and ancient fighting to break free. What are you? She whispered. The carriage steadied. Tavian released her abruptly, retreating to his side with rigid control. I'm the monster they warned you about, he said flatly. The beast that rules through fear and blood. Every terrible story you've heard about the Alpha King of Valdris, all of them are true. I don't believe that. His laugh was bitter. Then you're a fool. Maybe. Eloin straightened her gown with trembling hands. But I know what cruelty looks like. I've lived with it my entire life. And you? She met his glowing gaze without flinching. Whatever you are, you're not cruel. A cruel man would have left me crying in that corridor. Something fractured in Tavian's expression. For a moment, he looked almost human, lost, lonely, desperate for something he couldn't name. Then the walls came back up. Sleep, he commanded. We have hours before we reach Valdris, and you'll need your strength. For what? He turned to stare out the window at the passing darkness. For surviving what comes next. They arrived at Valdris as dawn bled across the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The castle rose from the mountains like a living thing, all dark stone and sharp angles, towers that scraped the clouds, windows that glinted like watching eyes. Eloin had never seen anything so beautiful or terrifying. Wolves flanked the carriage as it passed through the gates, not the small, manageable wolves of Ashford, but massive creatures whose shoulders reached the carriage windows. Their eyes tracked her with unsettling intelligence. They won't harm you, Tavian said, though he hadn't looked at her since that moment in the carriage. They know who you are. And who am I? He didn't answer. Inside, the castle was warmer than she'd expected, fires roaring in every hearth, tapestries depicting wolves and moons, and ancient battles covering the stone walls. Servants bowed as they passed, their expressions carefully neutral, though Eloin caught curious glances directed her way. Tavian led her through corridors and up spiraling stairs until they reached a heavy wooden door. Your chambers, he said. You'll find everything you need inside. Someone will bring food shortly. He turned to leave. Wait. Eloin grabbed his arm without thinking. The effect was immediate. Tavian went rigid, every muscle locking tight. A low sound rumbled in his chest, not quite a growl, not quite a groan. Don't, he said through gritted teeth. Don't touch me right now. Why? She should release him, she knew she should, but that strange pull was back, stronger than before, demanding she hold on. What's happening to us? Nothing that should be happening. He still wouldn't look at her. You're tired and confused. You've been through trauma. What you're feeling isn't real. It feels real. Finally, he turned. And Eloin's breath died in her throat. His control was slipping. She could see it in the way his features seemed to shift shadows where shadows shouldn't be. The hint of something larger pressing against the confines of his human form. You don't understand. His voice was guttural, barely recognizable. If I lose control, if I let myself feel what I'm feeling, I'll hurt you. I'll claim you in ways you can't comprehend. Bind you to me so completely you'll never be free. Maybe I don't want to be free. The words escaped before she could stop them. Tavian's eyes flared. In one fluid movement, he had her pressed against the wall, his body caging hers, his breath hot against her neck. You don't mean that, he rasped. You don't know what you're offering. Eloin's heart hammered. Fear and desire tangled together until she couldn't distinguish them. Then show me. A shudder ran through his massive frame. His lips brushed her throat, not a kiss, but something more primitive. He was scenting her, she realized. Drawing her essence into himself. Mine, he growled, and the words seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his chest. You're mine. Every part of you calls to every part of me. I knew it the moment I caught your scent in that corridor. His teeth grazed the sensitive spot, where her neck met her shoulder, and Eloin gasped as pleasure, unlike anything she'd known, shot through her body. If I bite you here, Tavian murmured against her skin. You'll belong to me forever. The bond will mark your very soul. Tavian, say no. His whole body trembled with restraint. Tell me to stop, give me a reason to walk away. But Eloin couldn't speak. The sensation of his mouth on her throat, the weight of his body against hers, the overwhelming rightness of being in his arms, it stole every rational thought. When her silence stretched too long, Tavian made a sound of surrender, and sank his teeth into her flesh. Pain exploded through Eloin, bright, sharp, and consuming. She cried out, her nails digging into his shoulders, but he held her firm, his jaw locked, his teeth buried deep. Then the pain transformed. Heat flooded her veins like liquid fire, spreading from the bite through her entire body. She felt him everywhere, not just physically, but somehow inside her mind, her heart. His emotions crashed into hers. Possessive hunger, desperate longing, centuries of loneliness, finally finding its end. Mine, she heard his voice echo in her thoughts. Finally, mine, yours. Something inside her answered. Always yours. When he finally released her, Eloin's legs gave out completely. Tavian caught her, lifting her as if she weighed nothing, carrying her into the chamber, and laying her on the massive bed. What did you do? She breathed, her hand rising shakily to touch her throat. She could feel the wound already closing, but something else lingered, a warmth, a presence that hadn't been there before. Tavian knelt beside the bed, his expression tortured. I claimed you, he said hollowly. I marked you as my mate. And I'm so sorry, I tried to stop. I tried. He pressed his forehead to her hand. I've doomed you. Just as I doomed myself. Doomed us how? He looked up, and she saw that his eyes had returned to gold but different now. Deeper. Connected to her in ways she was only beginning to understand. A mating bond requires completion, he said. Without it, the mark will slowly poison you. And completion requires you to accept something that will change you forever. Change me into what? Tavian's jaw tightened. Into a monster. Like me. 3 days passed in a fever of strange sensations. Eloin drifted in and out of consciousness, aware of hands pressing cool cloths to her forehead, of bitter liquid being coaxed past her lips, of voices speaking in urgent, worried tones. And beneath it all, that warmth, that presence, she now recognized as Tavian. Somehow inside her, even when he wasn't physically near, she could feel his guilt like a weight in her own chest, his fear, his desperate hope that she would survive what he'd done. Stay with me, she heard his voice whisper through the bond. Fight, please. I'm trying, she wanted to answer. But words required strength she didn't have. On the 4th morning, Eloin opened her eyes to find a young woman sitting beside her bed, dark-haired, sharp-featured, watching her with undisguised curiosity. You're awake. The woman's voice was matter of fact. Good. I was beginning to think I'd have to tell the king his mate had died. Elowen struggled to sit up. Who are you? Kael's sister. Sarah. She handed Elowen a cup of water. Kael is the king's second. Well, I suppose I'm your nursemaid now. Lucky me. Where's Tavian? Something flickered in Sarah's expression. The king is dealing with more pressing matters than a sick Omega. The words stung more than they should have. But he's felt you wake, Sarah added grudgingly. He'll come when he's finished with the delegation. What delegation? Before Sarah could answer, a commotion erupted in the corridor. Raised voices, the sound of scuffling, then a crash that shook the walls. Sarah was on her feet instantly, a blade appearing in her hand from seemingly nowhere. Stay here, she ordered, moving toward the door. But Elowen's wolf was already surging forward, responding to something, a scent drifting through the chaos that made her blood run cold. Aldrich. The door burst open. He stood there, the man who'd rejected and humiliated her, his ice-blue eyes wild with something that looked like madness. Two guards flanked him, both bleeding, both struggling to restrain him. There she is. Aldrich's lip curled. The worthless Omega who caught a king's eye. Did you bewitch him, Elowen? Use some Omega trick to climb above your station? Get him out of here, Sarah commanded. But Aldrich shook off the guards with inhuman strength. I came to deliver a message. He stepped closer, and Elowen saw something wrong with him, shadows moving beneath his skin, the same way they'd moved beneath Tavian's. But darker, corrupted. From someone who's very interested in your new mate. Who? Aldrich smiled, and it was terrible. The true Alpha King. The one who should be ruling Valdris, before Tavian stole the throne. His eyes locked onto hers. He knows what you are, little Omega. He knows what's sleeping inside you. And he's coming to wake it up. What I am? Elowen shook her head. I'm nothing. An ordinary Omega, Aldrich laughed. Is that what they told you? What your father made you believe? He leaned close, and she could smell rot beneath his perfume. You're not ordinary. You've never been ordinary. Why do you think Tavian claimed you so desperately? Why do you think the bond took hold so fast? You're lying. Am I? Aldrich's hand shot out, gripping her wrist. Then explain this. Pain seared through Elowen, but not from his grip. From inside her, something ancient and enormous was rising, responding to the threat, to the corruption in Aldrich's touch. Light burst from her hands, not soft light, not gentle healing warmth. This was blinding, furious, an explosion of power that hurled Aldrich across the room and slammed him into the far wall. Elowen stared at her palms in horror. They were glowing. Actually glowing, golden light pouring from her skin like she'd swallowed the sun. What's happening to me? Through the bond, she felt Tavian's reaction, shock, recognition, and something that felt terrifyingly like awe. Then he was there, materializing in the doorway, his golden eyes taking in the scene with predatory calm. Aldrich crumpled against the wall, the guards unconscious, and Elowen, standing in the center of it all with power blazing from her hands. Everyone out, Tavian ordered quietly. The room emptied. Even Sarah withdrew, though her gaze lingered on Elowen with new calculation. When they were alone, Tavian approached slowly, as if she were a wild animal he didn't want to startle. You knew, Elowen breathed. The light was fading now, receding back into wherever it had come from. When you found me in that corridor, you knew I was different. I suspected. He stopped an arm's length away. Your scent was unlike anything I'd encountered. And your wolf, even suppressed, I could sense its strength, far beyond an ordinary Omega. What am I? Tavian's expression was unreadable. You're what my people call a Luna Prime, the rarest bloodline in our kind. Alphas are born to lead. His voice dropped. Luna Primes are born to rule beside them, to amplify their power 100-fold, and to destroy anything that threatens what they love. That's impossible. My family hid it from you, suppressed your gifts, probably fed you herbs to keep your wolf dormant. His jaw tightened. Your father knew exactly what you were. Why do you think he was so eager to bond you to Aldrich? The implications crashed over Elowen like a wave. Her whole life, the weakness, the submission, the feeling that she was somehow less, all of it had been manufactured, forced upon her. Aldrich mentioned someone, she said slowly. A true alpha king. Someone who wants to use me. Tavian's expression darkened. My brother, he said grimly. The one I killed to claim this throne. Or thought I killed. He met her eyes, and she saw fear there, real, raw fear that shook her to her core. Apparently, I was wrong. The war room fell silent as Tavian finished speaking. Around the massive oak table sat his most trusted advisors. Kale, his beta, whose scarred face betrayed nothing. Sarah, arms crossed and eyes narrowed. And Elder Mora, the ancient she-wolf who had served 3 generations of Valdris kings. Elowyn stood at Tavian's side, still reeling from the revelations of the past hour. Kaelin, Tavian's elder brother, who should have inherited the throne, who had been corrupted by dark magic and slaughtered half the pack in his madness, who Tavian had been forced to kill in single combat 5 years ago. Except, he hadn't died. The corruption preserved him, Elder Mora said, her voice like dry leaves. Fed on his hatred, kept his body alive, even as his soul rotted away. He's been building strength in the shadow territories, gathering wolves who share his appetites. How many? Kale asked. Hundreds. Perhaps more. Mora's ancient eyes shifted to Elowyn. And now he knows about her. Every gaze in the room turned to Elowyn. She fought the urge to shrink back, to make herself small, the way she'd been trained. The Luna Prime power, Tavian said heavily. Kaelin wants it for himself. Can he take it? Sarah demanded. Force a bond with her. Not while my claim exists. Tavian's hand found Elowyn's, his grip almost painful. But if he kills me, he won't. The words left Elowyn's mouth before she could stop them. Tavian turned to her, something unreadable in his golden eyes. You don't understand what he is, what he's become. The brother I knew died years ago. What remains is, I felt the corruption. Elowyn's voice steadied. When Aldrich touched me, it was like touching decay, death wearing a mask of life. I understand exactly what we're facing. Then you understand why I can't let you near him. And you understand that I'm not asking permission. The tension between them crackled like lightning. Elowyn could feel it through the bond, his desperate need to protect her, warring with his reluctant respect for her defiance. She has fire, Mora observed with something like approval. Good. She'll need it. A messenger burst through the doors, face pale with terror. Your Majesty, the eastern border, they're here. Hundreds of them, pouring through the mountain pass. Tavian was moving before the messenger finished speaking. Kael, rally the warriors. Sarah, secure the civilians in the inner keep. He turned to Elowyn, cupping her face in his hands. Stay here, promise me. Tavian, promise me. His eyes blazed with desperation. I can't fight him if I'm worried about you. I can't. His voice broke. You're everything. Do you understand? Everything I never knew I was missing. I won't lose you. Through the bond? She felt his terror not of death, but of failing her. I promise, she whispered. He kissed her then. Hard, desperate, tasting of fear and love and goodbye. Then he was gone, and Elowyn was left standing in the empty war room with her heart in her throat. She lasted 10 minutes before the bond began to scream. Pain lanced through her chest, not physical pain, but something deeper. She could feel Tavian fighting, feel every blow he dealt and received, his rage, his grief as pack members fell around him, and beneath it all, something darker. A presence at the edge of their bond, pressing inward, seeking, little Luna. The voice slithered through her mind like oil. Did you think you could hide from me? Elowyn gasped, clutching the table for support. Your mate is strong, but strength means nothing against inevitability. He will fall, and when he does, you will come to me. Never, she gritted out. Cruel laughter echoed in her skull. You misunderstand. This isn't a request. The pain intensified. Elowyn felt something being pulled from her, not her power, but her sense of self, her connection to Tavian. Kaelin was trying to sever their bond by force. She screamed. Through blurring vision, she saw the war room doors splinter inward. Wolves poured through wrong wolves, their eyes black with corruption, their forms twisted and wrong. And behind them, a figure that might once have been handsome but was now something else entirely. Tall like Tavian, but gaunt, his skin stretched too tight over bones that seemed to shift beneath the surface. His eyes were pits of absolute darkness. Hello, little Luna, Kaelin said, and his voice was the sound of graves opening. I've been waiting so long to meet you. Eowyn reached for her power, but the corruption was already around her, suppressing the light. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Kaelin's hand closed around her throat. Don't worry, he murmured as darkness claimed her. This will only hurt forever. Eowyn woke in chains. Not iron chains, these were made of something darker, something that seemed to drink the light around them. They wrapped her wrists and ankles, pinning her to a stone altar in a cavern that reeked of blood and despair. Ah, you're awake. Kaelin emerged from the shadows, his corrupted eyes studying her with clinical interest. Good. I prefer my prey conscious. Tavian will come for me. I'm counting on it. Kaelin traced a finger down her cheek, and everywhere he touched, her skin burned with cold. Do you know why I want you, little Luna? Beyond your power? Eowyn said nothing. Because you're his weakness. The great Alpha King, feared throughout the realm, brought low by a single woman. Kaelin leaned close. When he comes, and he will come, he'll be so focused on saving you that he won't see the blade at his back. And when he falls, when our bond breaks, and yours shatters. His smile was a wound. Then I'll claim you properly. Make you watch as I destroy everything he built. You're insane. I'm patient. There's a difference. He straightened. But we have time before your mate arrives. Let me show you what awaits you. He pressed his palm to her forehead. Visions exploded through Eowyn's mind. She saw Valdris burning, its people slaughtered, saw Tavian on his knees, broken and bleeding, saw herself standing at Kaelin's side, eyes black with corruption, power twisted into something monstrous. This is your future, his voice echoed. This is what you'll become. No. Eowyn fought against the visions, reaching for the bond. No, I won't. You have no choice. The Luna Prime power responds to whoever claims it. And once your mate is dead, I will claim you so thoroughly that nothing of you remains. But even as the visions threatened to consume her, Eowyn felt something else. A warmth pushing back against the darkness. Not Tavian, this came from within her, from the power she'd only just discovered. The light wasn't gone. It was waiting. You don't control me, she thought fiercely. You never will. She let the power rise. Golden light exploded from her chest, shattering the dark chains, hurling Kaelin backward with a sound like thunder. The cavern shook. Rocks fell from the ceiling, and through the chaos, Eowyn heard something that made her heart soar. A howl. Deep, powerful, furious. Tavian. He burst through the cavern wall in wolf form, massive, midnight black, eyes blazing with golden fire. Behind him came his pack, dozens of wolves streaming into the darkness like a tide of righteous fury. Kaelin snarled, his form shifting, twisting into something that was wolf and shadow and nightmare combined. The two brothers clashed in a collision of light and darkness that shook the very stone. Eowyn. Kael appeared at her side in human form, blood streaking his face. Can you run? I can fight. No. He grabbed her arm, pulling her toward a gap in the cavern wall. The king's orders. Get her out, no matter the cost. I won't leave him, but Kael was already shifting, throwing her onto his wolf form's back, bounding through the chaos before she could protest. Through the bond, she felt Tavian's relief and his fury. Go, his voice echoed in her mind. Live. That's all I need. I'm coming back for you, she swore. Don't. And beneath the command, she felt his fear. Not of death, of what she might become if she watched him die. If I fall, run. Don't look back. Just run. Kael carried her out of the mountain and into the gray dawn. Behind them, the sounds of battle continued, and through the bond, Eowyn felt every blow, every wound, every moment of her mate's desperate fight. She felt the exact moment his strength began to fail. 2 days. 2 days since Kael had carried her back to Valdris. 2 days since the survivors had straggled home, bloodied and broken. 2 days since Tavian had been carried through the gates on a stretcher, more deadly than alive. Eowyn hadn't left his side. She sat beside his bed now, holding his hand, watching his chest rise and fall in shallow, labored breaths. The healers had done everything they could, cleaned his wounds, set his broken bones, forced healing drafts down his throat, but something was wrong, something the healers couldn't fix. It's the corruption, Sarah said quietly from the doorway. Kaelin's claws were poisoned with it. It's spreading through his blood. There must be something. There isn't. Sarah's voice was flat. I've seen this before. In wolves Kalen captured and released, just to watch them die slowly. The corruption feeds on life force. It won't stop until there's nothing left. Elowen's grip tightened on Tavian's hand. How long? Days. Hours. Maybe. Through the bond fading now. Weakening as he weakened, Elowen felt Tavian's consciousness stir. You're still here, his voice whispered in her mind. You should go. Should run. Like I told you, I'm not going anywhere. Stubborn female. Even dying? There was warmth in his mental voice. I claimed a stubborn, beautiful, impossible female. Tears streamed down Elowen's face. You're not dying. I won't let you. Some things even Luna Primes can't control. A pause. But there is something. Something that might save you. I don't want to be saved. I want you. Listen to me. His mental voice strengthened with desperate urgency. The bond isn't complete. If I die now, the backlash will destroy you. But if you sever it first, if you cut me out before the corruption spreads to you, no, Elowen. I said no. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. I would rather die with you than live without you. Don't you understand that? His eyes opened. They were dim now, barely gold, but they found her face with unerring accuracy. I understand, he whispered aloud. I just hoped you'd choose differently. You hoped wrong. A ghost of a smile crossed his cracked lips. Stubborn female. Elder Mora appeared in the doorway, her ancient face grave. There is another way, she said slowly. But the cost. Tell me. Elowen's voice left no room for argument. Mora exchanged a look with Sarah, then stepped into the room. The Luna Prime bond is not like ordinary mating bonds. It's deeper, more primal. It connects not just hearts, but souls. She paused. If you complete the bond fully, give yourself to him entirely, hold nothing back, your life force will merge with his. Your strength could burn out the corruption. Then I'll do it. You didn't let me finish. Mora's eyes were ancient, sorrowful. The corruption is strong. Even your light might not be enough. If you fail, you won't just die. You'll be consumed, both of you, together, destroyed from within. And if I don't try, he dies. And you follow, shattered by the broken bond. Elowen looked at Tavian's pale face, at the man who had seen her worth when everyone else saw nothing, who had claimed her not for her power, but for the fire in her soul, who had given her purpose, meaning, love, no choice at all, she said quietly. She leaned down and pressed her lips to his. What are you doing? His mental voice was panicked. Elowen. Stop, accepting you, completely, holding nothing back. She opened herself to the bond, not the tentative connection they'd shared, but everything. Every wall, every fear, every hidden piece of her soul. She poured herself into him like water into a vessel, filling every crack, every shadow, and every wound. The corruption rose to meet her, hungry and terrible. And Elowen smiled. You want to consume something? She thought at the darkness. Try consuming this. She unleashed her light. The darkness was absolute. Elowen floated in a void that seemed to stretch forever, her golden light the only illumination in an ocean of black. She could feel the corruption all around her, not attacking, not yet, but watching, waiting, assessing this new threat that had dared to enter its domain. Foolish little light, it whispered. And the voice was Kalen's, but also something older, something that had existed long before him. Did you think love could conquer me? I am the end of all things. I am the darkness that waits at the edge of every life. You're nothing, Elowen thought back. Nothing but a parasite feeding on stolen power. The darkness laughed, a terrible sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Then let me show you what nothing can do. It struck. Elowen screamed as tendrils of corruption wrapped around her light, squeezing, suffocating. She felt her power flickering, dimming under the assault. The darkness was so strong, so hungry, and she was just one woman with a gift she barely understood. Tavian. She reached through the bond desperately. Tavian. I need you. But there was only silence. He was too weak, too far gone to hear her. He's already mine, the darkness crooned. His soul is delicious, so much guilt, so much grief. Do you know he blames himself for what I became? His beloved brother, corrupted, and mad. And he couldn't save me. Couldn't do anything but put me down like a rabid dog. You're not Kalen. You're the thing that destroyed him. I am him now. his hatred, his jealousy, his hunger for power. I am everything he tried to hide, everything he pretended not to feel. The tendrils tightened. And soon I'll be everything you are too. Elowen's light guttered like a candle in a storm. She could feel herself fading, her essence being pulled apart thread by thread. She had gambled everything on love being enough, and she was losing. I'm sorry, she thought. Not to the darkness but to Tavian. To the future they would never have. I'm so sorry, I wasn't strong enough. And then, impossibly, she felt him. Not the fading echo she'd grown accustomed to, but Tavian himself, his consciousness reaching for hers through the bond with desperate, furious strength. You are not dying for me. His mental voice was ragged but fierce. Do you hear me, female? I forbid it. Tavian? Hope sparked in her chest. How? You poured yourself into me. Did you think I wouldn't feel it? Wouldn't fight my way back to you? She felt his presence wrap around her like armor. You're not alone in this. You were never alone. The darkness recoiled as a second light joined hers, not golden but silver, fierce and wild. Tavian's essence, battered but unbroken, standing beside her in the void. Impossible, the corruption snarled. You should be dead. You should be mine. I belong to her. Tavian's voice rang through the darkness. Only her. Always her. Their lights intertwined, gold and silver merging into something greater than either alone. Elowen felt power surge through her, not just her own, but his. And something else too. Something that existed in the space between them. Born from the bond itself. Together, she thought. Together, he agreed. They struck as one. Light exploded through the void, not attacking the darkness but transforming it. Everywhere it touched, the corruption didn't just burn away. It was purified, transmuted back into the life force it had stolen. Elowen heard screaming Kaelin's voice, or what remained of it, crying out as the thing that had consumed him was finally, mercifully destroyed. And then there was only light. Elowen opened her eyes. She was still in Tavian's chamber, still kneeling beside his bed. But everything had changed. The gray pallor was gone from his skin. The black veins of corruption had vanished, and his eyes, his beautiful golden eyes, were open, clear, and fixed on her face with an expression that stole her breath. You saved me, he whispered. We saved each other. He reached up, his hand trembling as it cupped her cheek. The bond, I can feel it. Really feel it. Not the shadow we had before. You're everywhere. In every part of me. Is that bad? His laugh was weak but genuine. It's terrifying. And perfect. And I never want it to stop. Elowen leaned into his touch, tears streaming down her face. I thought I'd lost you. When the darkness was pulling me under. When I couldn't hear you anymore. I know. He pulled her down, pressing his forehead to hers. I felt you giving up. Felt you saying goodbye. And I refused. Do you understand? I refused to let you go. Stubborn male. Learned from the best. She kissed him then, soft, reverent, tasting of tears, and relief and joy so profound it ached. His hand slid into her hair, holding her close, and through the bond, she felt his love like a sunrise after endless night. When they finally parted, Tavian's expression grew serious. The bond still isn't complete, he said quietly. You've claimed me in every way that matters. But, the mark, I know. Elowen's gaze dropped to his throat, to the pulse beating strong and steady beneath his skin. You marked me that first night, but I haven't. You don't have to. His voice was careful, controlled, but she could feel his longing through the bond. What we have is already more than I ever. I want to. He went still. Elowen, I want to mark you. She met his eyes, letting him feel the certainty in her heart. I want everyone to know you're mine. I want to complete this bond, and spend the rest of my life discovering what we can become together. You're sure? His voice was rough, barely controlled. Once it's done, there's no going back. We'll be bound until death and beyond. I've never been surer of anything. Something primal flickered in his gaze. In one fluid movement, despite his weakness, he pulled her onto the bed, settling her across his lap, so they were face to face. His hands framed her hips, steadying her, and she could feel the rapid beat of his heart against her chest. Then take what's yours, he growled softly. Elowen leaned forward, her lips brushing his jaw, his neck, finding the spot where his pulse hammered beneath warm skin. She breathed him in pine and wood smoke and wildness, and felt her wolf rise to the surface for the first time since her power had awakened. But this was different. This wasn't the terrified, suppressed creature she'd known her whole life. This wolf was strong, confident, ready to claim her mate. Mine, she whispered against his throat. Yours, he answered. Always yours. Her teeth sank deep. Tavian's roar shook the walls. His arms crushed her against him, his whole body arching as the claiming mark seared into his flesh. Through the bond, she felt what he felt, pain and pleasure so intertwined they became the same thing. Ecstasy so intense it bordered on destruction, and then the bond completed. It was like a door opening in her mind, no. 1,000 doors, all at once. She felt everything. His memories, his hopes, his fears, his love. Centuries of loneliness ended in a single moment, a heart that had never fully belonged to anyone, finally finding its home. Mine, his voice echoed in her mind, no longer a whisper but a declaration. Mine, she answered, and the word was a vow, a promise, an unbreakable truth. When she finally released him, pulling back to see his face, they were both crying. I love you, Elowen breathed. I don't know when it happened or how, but I love you so much it terrifies me. Good. Tavian's smile was radiant, transforming his harsh features into something beautiful. Because I've loved you since the moment I caught your scent in that corridor, when you were crying alone, abandoned, and still somehow, the strongest person I'd ever met. I wasn't strong. I was broken. You were magnificent. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, and the corners of her lips. And now you're my queen, my mate, my heart. The coronation took place a week later. Elowen stood in the great hall of Valdris, surrounded by pack members who had once been strangers and were now family. She wore a gown of silver and gold, colors that marked her as Luna Prime, the first in 300 years, according to Elder Mora's records. At her side stood Tavian, resplendent in ceremonial armor, the claiming mark visible above his collar for all to see. He'd refused to cover it, insisted on displaying it proudly. Let them see, he'd said. Let every wolf in every territory know that I am claimed. That I belong to you as surely as you belong to me. The ceremony was ancient, beautiful, filled with howls and blessings and vows spoken in the old tongue. But Elowen barely heard any of it. She was too busy marveling at the impossible turn her life had taken. A month ago, she'd been a rejected Omega, crying alone in a dark corridor, convinced she was worthless. Now she was a queen, a Luna Prime, mated to a king who looked at her like she'd hung the moon and stars. What are you thinking? Tavian's voice whispered through their bond. That I don't deserve this. Any of this. You deserve everything. His hand found hers, squeezing gently. And I plan to spend eternity proving it to you. As the pack raised their voices in celebration, as wolves howled their allegiance to their new queen, Elowen felt something she'd never experienced before. Peace. She was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she was meant to be. And when Tavian pulled her into his arms and kissed her before the entire pack, when cheers and howls filled the great hall like music, Elowen finally understood what it meant to belong. Not to a place, not to a title, but to a person who saw her, truly saw her and loved her anyway. She had spent her whole life being told she was less than, weak, deficient, worthless. But in Tavian's arms, beneath his claiming mark and the weight of his love, Elowen knew the truth. She had never been worthless. She had simply been waiting. And now, finally, the waiting was over. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed the story. If you'd like to hear more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Your support truly means the world to me, and I can't wait to share more stories with you soon.